Hi, my name's Charlie. I'm with the Extension Master Food Volunteer Program, and I have two recipes to show you today. They're very different recipes. One's a soup and one is a packet meal, but they have four things in common. They're easy, they're one dish meals, so there's very little cleanup, they're nutritious, and they're delicious. So our first recipe is going to be 15-minute soup. We're going to start with a protein source, which is going to be, in this case, Great Northern beans. You could add any kind of beans you want, kidney beans or whatever you like. I like Great Northern beans for this. And we're going to drain the beans first. So I'm going to pour them in a small strainer and rinse to make sure I get all the beans. And we will let those sit for a few minutes to drain the water out. Meanwhile, we need 2 cans of tomatoes for this recipe. So I have 1 can from the grocery store, and I have 1 can, which is our last can of home canned tomatoes for this year. So sorry to see them all used up, but they've been good. So we're going to put both of those in the pan. And we're going to use 1 can, a 14.5-ounce can of low sodium chicken broth. So let's get that guy open. You could use vegetable broth for this also if you want to make the dish vegetarian. We need to chop 1 onion, some people don't like onion in soup, so you could leave it out, but I think it adds a nice flavor. This onion's falling apart. And I have a ½ teaspoon of garlic salt. If you don't like the garlic flavor, you could use regular salt instead. So we're going to bring this to the stove and turn that on high and give it a stir. Okay, we need to get that boiling before we do the next step, so we'll pause the video and come back when that's boiling. Okay, so we have a good boil here now. So we're ready to go to the next step. We're going to add the beans that we drained. We could have added them at the beginning, doesn't matter. And we're going to add 1 package of frozen spinach, and in this case my spinach is mostly thawed, so it'll be easy to spread out. If you put it in while it's frozen, you'll need to kind of bust it apart with a spoon and get it to go into solution quicker. And then when the soup comes back to a boil, which will just take a minute, we're going to add some pasta. Now I'm using shell pasta, but you can add whatever you have on hand. So it could be macaroni or bow ties or penne, whatever you have left over. You only need about a half a cup of pasta for this recipe, so use whatever you like. So I'm going to add we have a good boil, I'm going to add my half a cup of shell pasta and stir it. Ooh, that's looking good already. I'm going to turn the temperature down to about medium to maintain the boil, but not go crazy. Okay, so that's going to take about 10 minutes to cook. You just cook it until the pasta is the firmness that you like. So I'm going to give it about 10 minutes. And I'll start the packet meals preparation while we're waiting for that. So I've got the oven preheating to 450 for that. So let's get started on the packet meals. So packet meals are fun because we cook them in a package made of aluminum foil, or you can use parchment paper for this. And I'm going to do 2 at once. Our packet meals are 4 layers, and there are a lot of different ways you can make packet meals. The bottom layer is your hearty vegetables, which is usually the root vegetables, potatoes, carrots, something like that, something that's going to take longer to cook and be more firm. The next layer is the protein. In this case, I'm going to use some boneless pork chops. You could use chicken, fish works really well in a packet meal. Pretty much any protein you want. You could use tofu. The next layer is the more tender vegetables. In my case, I'm going to use green pepper, mushrooms, and tomatoes. But you could put anything you like. You could do a southwestern flavor packet meal. You could use corn and cumin for the spice. You could use squash, onion, olives, pretty much any tender vegetables you want. And then the last layer is your toppings and or spices. So in my case, I'm just adding a couple of spices, rosemary and thyme, but you could add something like lemon if it's fish. You could have barbecue sauce, salsa, salad dressing. Some people like to put cheese on them depending on what they're cooking. But like I said, in my case, it's going to be simple, just rosemary and thyme. So I'm going to start with potatoes, and I'm using Red Bliss potatoes. The type of potato is not too important. I think Red Bliss and Yukon Gold are good choices because the peeling on both of those is thin and edible, and it has a nice flavor. So you don't have to peel them, and it's nutritious. We're going to cut the potatoes in fairly large chunks, and you want to get them, roughly even so they take about the same amount of time to cook, but you don't have to be crazy about it. I've already washed my hands and all the vegetables in advance. So for each packet meal, we're going to start with a layer of potatoes. Right in the middle. And then we're going to do our protein. And for the pork, we're going to brush it with olive oil. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper into the pork. Then we're going to flip it and wash hands. And we'll do the same on the other side. A little bit of olive oil. Brush it on. And a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay. So we'll put the pork chops on top of the root vegetables. And these are boneless because with the bone in, it doesn't cook as evenly. The boneless cook really evenly, which is a help. Okay, our next ingredient is going to be grape tomatoes. And I'm going to use the 2-lid method of slicing the tomatoes in half. So these are some grape tomatoes. They've been washed already. It's trying to get away. And you can see that does a great job of slicing those in half. So I'm just going to pile some of those on top of each. We're going to do some green pepper next. Those lids came off of barbecue takeout containers, in case you're wondering. So that's going to be more green pepper than we're going to need. I can use the leftover for another recipe. These chops are a little bit small, so a bigger chop would be easier to build on top of. But the flavor will be there, so. Okay. So now we just need our spices. I'm going to, oh, thank you. Our next vegetable is going to be the mushrooms. I'm going to cut the dry end off of these. These are just button mushrooms. And then slice them a little bit coarse. That's good. And so we're going to do our 2 spices, rosemary and thyme. So I have some fresh rosemary. Rosemary is really easy to grow in North Carolina. It comes back every year once you get it started. And 1 rosemary bush will give you enough rosemary for a big family and all your neighbors. So that's fun. After you pick it, you wash it thoroughly and then just pull the leaves off. Then the leaves have these little ends on them. I don't know if you can see that. It's actually edible, but I think it's nicer if you trim those off. So we're just going to need a few of these. Okay. So then I'm going to chop them a bit. They do like to jump around. Just a sprinkle of rosemary on top of each one. Rosemary is nice because it goes really well with the potatoes and with pork, so that's good. And then for thyme, I'm using dried thyme, and we'll just do a little sprinkle of thyme on each one of those. Okay, so the only step that's left is to fold up the aluminum foil to make our packet. We want to fold it over along the whole length, then roll the end up. There's no need to pierce holes in the packet. The steam will be able to escape. So those are ready to go in the oven. They're going to go in a 450 degree oven. They'll take about 20 to 30 minutes to cook a packet meal. It depends on what the protein is and how high did you stack it. I'm going to check these after 20 minutes to make sure the pork doesn't get too overdone. So we'll come back to that in 20 minutes. Meantime, let's have a taste of the soup. It should be fully cooked. That's delicious. It doesn't need salt at all. So the soup is ready to go. We will come back in 20 minutes and see how the packet meals are coming. Hi, so it's been 20 minutes, so we're going to check if our packet meals are done. Since this is pork, the USDA says it needs an internal temperature of 145 degrees to be safe. And about 1 in 6 Americans get sick from foodborne illness every year. And I don't want to be sick. Not being sick is one of my favorite things. So I'm going to check the internal temperature of the pork. It's really easy with packet meals because you can slide the thermometer through the package and you can feel when you get into the pork. And we'll try to get right about in the middle of the pork. And the thermometer says 155, so that's great. We're well over the 145. We need to be safe. We'll just double check the other one. Same. Okay, so we're all good. Let's open up the packet meals and see how they look. So there we have it, a meal in a packet. You could just put that on a plate and ready to eat. I hope you enjoy using these two recipes, and I'll see you next time.